The Catholic Church, one of the most influential institutions in human history, has shaped nations, inspired revolutions, and guided the moral compass of billions for over 2 millennia. Yet, the story most people know is often a polished version, leaving out controversies, power struggles, and surprising truths hidden behind gilded altars and centuries-old walls. Today, we're diving deep into the true history of the Catholic Church that no one told you, an unfiltered journey into faith, politics, and power that will change the way you see history forever. Long before the Vatican stood as the symbol of Catholic power, the Church began as a small, persecuted sect in the Roman Empire. Early Christians met in secret, fearing imprisonment or death. But here's the twist: Christianity's rise wasn't purely spiritual. It gained momentum when Emperor Constantine legalized the faith in the 4th century through the Edict of Milan. This was not only a religious victory, but also a strategic political move to unify the empire under one belief system. What's rarely discussed is how early church leaders adopted and adapted pagan customs, festivals, architecture, and even titles, blending them into Christian tradition. This merging of faith and politics laid the foundation for the Catholic Church's incredible influence, but also sowed the seeds of future controversies. As centuries passed, the Catholic Church transformed from a spiritual refuge into a dominant political force. By the Middle Ages, popes wielded more authority than kings, influencing laws, wars, and even the coronation of rulers. The papal crown wasn't just a symbol of holiness, it was a declaration of supremacy. Behind closed doors, church officials negotiated alliances, brokered peace treaties, and sometimes orchestrated power plays that changed the course of nations. The papal states themselves, spanning vast territories in Italy, were governed directly by the Church, showing that its influence wasn't confined to Scripture. This mingling of sacred and secular authority would bring both unparalleled power and inevitable corruption, an uncomfortable truth often absent from Sunday sermons. One of the most controversial chapters in Catholic history is the Inquisition, a system designed to root out heresy, but often used to silence dissent. From the 12th century onward, anyone challenging church doctrine risked interrogation, torture, or execution. While the official goal was to preserve the purity of the faith, the reality was often more political than spiritual. Control over knowledge became central. Certain books were banned, scientists like Galileo were censured, and independent thinkers were forced to recant under threat of punishment. The Church's tight grip on education and literacy meant that for centuries, it controlled not just what people believed, but what they were allowed to think. This period left a lasting mark on intellectual freedom and is a stark reminder of how power can shape and limit truth. By the 16th century, cracks in the Church's authority were impossible to ignore. Corruption, indulgence sales, and lavish lifestyles of clergy fueled outrage among believers. Figures like Martin Luther, John Calvin, and others challenged the Church's teachings, sparking the Protestant Reformation. For the first time in centuries, Catholic dominance faced a serious threat. The Church responded with the Counter-Reformation, reaffirming core doctrines, reforming certain corrupt practices, and launching new missionary efforts across the globe. Yet, the damage was done. Europe was permanently divided along religious lines, and bloody conflicts like the 30 Years' War revealed how deeply faith and politics were intertwined. This was a turning point where the Church could no longer dictate the beliefs of the entire Western world. Today, the Catholic Church stands as the largest Christian denomination with over 1.3 billion members worldwide. Yet, its modern history is not without shadows. Sexual abuse scandals, financial controversies, and secret archives have fueled criticism. The Vatican remains one of the most secretive institutions on Earth, holding documents and artifacts that could rewrite parts of history. On the other hand, the Church continues to be a force for charity, education, and humanitarian aid, shaping global debates on morality, social justice, and human rights. Its survival through empires, wars, and revolutions speaks to its resilience, but also to the careful control of its image. Understanding its true history means looking beyond stained glass and sacred hymns to the human and political realities behind them. Founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola, the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, became the church's intellectual and missionary powerhouse. Their mission was simple in theory but immense in execution: defend Catholicism against Protestant challenges and spread the faith globally. Jesuits became educators, establishing universities and schools that still exist today. They were also political advisors, often whispering into the ears of kings and queens. Their influence spread to Asia, Africa, and the Americas, where they engaged in diplomacy with emperors and native rulers. Yet, their power drew suspicion. Accusations of political meddling and secret agendas led to their suppression in 1773, though they would later be restored. The Jesuit legacy is one of brilliance and controversy, a reminder that in the Catholic Church, education was never just about knowledge, but about shaping ideology and loyalty. From the 15th to the 19th centuries, the Catholic Church played a central role in European colonial expansion. Missionaries accompanied explorers like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama, spreading the faith to the Americas, Africa, and Asia. This spiritual mission was often intertwined with imperial conquest, as baptism frequently followed military victory. Entire cultures were reshaped or erased under the banner of Christianization. While many missionaries genuinely sought to protect indigenous peoples from exploitation, others became complicit in colonial oppression. The Church's role in colonialism is still debated today, with some seeing it as a force for education and unity, and others as an instrument of cultural destruction. Either way, Catholicism's global spread cannot be separated from the sails of European ships and the ambitions of empires. In response to the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church convened the Council of Trent, 1545 to 1563, a monumental gathering that would define its theology for centuries. The council reaffirmed traditional doctrines like the authority of the Pope, the necessity of good works, and the importance of the seven sacraments. It also addressed corruption, demanding higher moral standards for clergy. The decisions made here revitalized the Church's spiritual authority while solidifying divisions with Protestantism. Art, architecture, and music became tools of inspiration. This era birthed the grandeur of Baroque churches, designed to overwhelm the senses and draw believers closer to God. The Council of Trent wasn't just about theology, it was about rebranding Catholicism as a powerful, majestic, and irresistible force. In 1929, the Lateran Treaty between the Holy See and Italy recognized Vatican City as an independent state. This made the Pope not just a religious leader, but also a head of state, unique in the modern world. The Vatican minted its own coins, issued passports, and maintained diplomatic relations with nations worldwide. While its territory is tiny, its influence remains massive. This sovereignty also grants the Vatican a level of legal independence that fuels both its mystique and criticism. Protected from external interference, the Vatican can conduct its affairs with a level of secrecy few governments enjoy. This political autonomy has allowed the Church to act on the world stage in ways most religious institutions could never dream of. The two world wars of the 20th century tested the Church's moral authority. In World War I, the Vatican called for peace but struggled to stop the bloodshed. In World War II, Pope Pius XII's actions remain one of history's great controversies. Critics accuse him of remaining silent on the Holocaust, while defenders argue he worked behind the scenes to save Jewish lives. The Church faced a moral dilemma: condemn regimes openly and risk greater persecution, or act discreetly to protect its members and influence. The wars forced the Catholic Church to confront its limitations as a moral force in a world driven by politics, ideology, and military might. Some priests, like Archbishop Oscar Romero, became martyrs for the cause. Liberation theology remains one of the boldest and most divisive chapters in modern Catholicism, showing that faith could be a revolutionary force. From 1962 to 1965, Pope John XXIII, and later Pope Paul VI, oversaw the Second Vatican Council, a dramatic modernization of the Catholic Church. Latin was replaced with local languages en masse, lay people gained greater participation, and the Church sought dialogue with other faiths. The goal was to make Catholicism more accessible and relevant in the modern world. While many welcomed these reforms, traditionalists saw them as dangerous compromises. Vatican II reshaped Catholic worship, aesthetics, and identity. Its effects are still felt today, with ongoing debates about how far the Church should adapt to cultural change. For centuries, women have been both central to Catholic life and restricted in leadership. From saints and mystics like Teresa of Avila to modern nuns running schools and hospitals, women have been the backbone of Catholic ministry. Yet, the priesthood remains male-only, and debates over women's ordination continue to stir controversy. The Church venerates Mary, the mother of Jesus, as the highest model of holiness, but critics argue that institutional structures limit women's power. This tension between reverence and restriction remains one of Catholicism's enduring contradictions. In recent decades, sexual abuse scandals have shaken the Catholic Church to its core. Revelations of widespread abuse by priests and systematic cover-ups by bishops have caused an unprecedented crisis of trust. Entire dioceses have faced bankruptcy from legal settlements, and attendance in some regions has sharply declined. While the Vatican has introduced reforms and promised transparency, many survivors and critics argue that justice remains incomplete. These scandals have not only tarnished the Church's moral authority, but also forced it to reckon with deep systemic failures. The relationship between Catholicism and science has been complicated. While the Galileo trial is often cited as proof of conflict, the Church has also been a patron of scientific study. Jesuit astronomers, geneticists, and philosophers have contributed to knowledge in remarkable ways. The Vatican Observatory still operates today, studying the cosmos. The Church officially embraces the Big Bang Theory and evolution, with divine guidance, but tensions remain when science challenges certain moral teachings. The story of Catholicism and science is not one of simple opposition, but of ongoing dialogue, sometimes harmonious, sometimes tense. Modern popes have embraced technology to connect with a global audience. Pope John Paul II traveled more than any pope in history. Pope Benedict XVI launched the Vatican's Twitter account, and Pope Francis live streams his messages to millions. Social media has allowed the Church to reach young people directly, but it has also exposed it to instant criticism. In a world where news travels at the speed of a tweet, the Vatican can no longer control narratives as tightly as before. The digital age is forcing the Church to balance tradition with unprecedented transparency. While Catholicism has declined in parts of Europe and North America, it is thriving in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The faith is growing fastest in countries like Nigeria, the Philippines, and Brazil, where vibrant worship styles and local traditions infuse Catholic practice with unique cultural flavors. This demographic shift is reshaping the Church's priorities, theology, and leadership. Future popes may come from the global South, reflecting the faith's new center of gravity. The Catholic Church has increasingly engaged in dialogue with other religions, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, to promote peace and mutual understanding. This effort, championed since Vatican II, aims to reduce religious conflict and build cooperation on humanitarian issues. However, such dialogue also raises internal debates about the uniqueness of Catholic salvation and the limits of compromise. Navigating unity without losing identity remains a delicate balancing act. The Vatican is home to some of the world's greatest art and architecture: Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica, and countless priceless manuscripts. These treasures attract millions of tourists each year, fueling the Vatican's economy. Critics, however, question whether the Church's immense wealth is compatible with Christ's call to poverty. The Church responds that these works are not personal possessions, but heritage for humanity. Still, the tension between spiritual mission and material opulence remains a constant theme in Catholic history. The Vatican Apostolic Archives, formerly known as the Secret Archives, hold centuries of confidential Church documents, from papal correspondence to political treaties. While some materials have been made public, vast sections remain off-limits. Historians speculate that these archives contain explosive revelations about church history, including its role in political events, wars, and even hidden theological debates. The secrecy fuels both fascination and conspiracy theories, keeping the Vatican shrouded in mystery. Throughout modern history, the Catholic Church has been caught in the crosscurrents of political revolutions. In France, it lost lands and influence during the French Revolution when anti-clerical sentiment boiled over into violent persecution. In Latin America, independence movements often clashed with the Church, which was seen as aligned with colonial powers. At other times, the Church sided with revolutionary ideals, particularly when they aligned with social justice and the dignity of the poor. The Vatican's ability to navigate these turbulent waters, sometimes resisting change, sometimes embracing it, has been key to its survival. Yet these choices often left lasting divisions between the Church and emerging secular governments. Canonized saints have always played a central role in Catholic devotion, offering models of holiness for believers to emulate. The cult of relics, bones, clothing, and even entire bodies of saints became a defining feature of Catholic spirituality. Pilgrimages to see these relics brought both deep religious experience and substantial economic benefit to towns and monasteries. Critics accused the Church of exploiting superstition, while defenders saw relics as tangible connections to the divine. The veneration of saints, from St. Francis of Assisi to Mother Teresa, continues to inspire millions, but it also highlights the Church's unique blend of faith, tradition, and ritual symbolism. From the Middle Ages to the present, the Catholic Church has been one of the largest providers of education in the world. Universities like the Sorbonne and Oxford had church roots, and Catholic schools today educate millions across every continent. This emphasis on learning has produced theologians, scientists, and political leaders who have shaped history. Yet, the Church's control of education has also been a way to maintain doctrinal influence. The content of teaching, especially on evolution, sexuality, and morality, often reflects ongoing tensions between traditional beliefs and modern academic freedom. Education has been both the Church's great gift to the world and one of its most effective tools for sustaining influence. The Pope, as the Bishop of Rome, is the central figure of Catholic unity. The doctrine of papal infallibility, formally declared in 1870, asserts that when the Pope speaks ex cathedra on matters of faith and morals, his teaching is free from error. This teaching was meant to strengthen unity, but it also stirred controversy, particularly among other Christian denominations. Over the centuries, individual popes have ranged from reformers and saints to political tacticians and even scandalous figures. The mystique of the papacy, white robes, ancient rituals, and global attention remains one of the most powerful symbols in world religion, projecting both spiritual and political authority. As the 21st century progresses, the Catholic Church faces a crossroads. Declining membership in the West, growing influence in the global South, pressure to reform clerical celibacy, debates over women's roles, and the challenge of addressing modern moral issues like climate change, migration, and bioethics all shape its future. Pope Francis has sought to position the Church as a voice for compassion, environmental stewardship, and economic justice, but internal divisions remain sharp. Whether the Church can adapt without losing its identity will determine if it remains a central force in global affairs or becomes a relic of its own history. One thing is certain: the true story of the Catholic Church is still being written, and its next chapters may be as dramatic as its past. While the Jesuits often get the spotlight, other Catholic orders played crucial roles in global evangelization. The Franciscans, Dominicans, and Augustinians each brought unique approaches to mission work. Franciscans focused on simplicity and serving the poor. Dominicans emphasized preaching and theological education, and Augustinians worked to establish stable community life in new territories. These orders founded missions in the Americas, Asia, and Africa, often learning local languages and documenting indigenous cultures. While some contributed to cultural preservation, others participated in forced conversions, creating a legacy both of compassion and cultural loss. Their work shows that the Catholic Church's expansion was never the effort of one group, but a vast network of dedicated and sometimes competing orders. Throughout history, the Catholic Church has been home to mystics who claimed visions, revelations, and direct experiences of the divine. Figures like Saint Catherine of Siena